The first half mile was 46.7 seconds, and Medina Spirit leads them up the backstretch. The Bob Baffert trainee is 3/4 of a length in front. Soup and Sandwich on the outside second. Mandaloon drafts in right behind the front runners, third on the inside. Then it's Helium in fourth. Hot Rod Charlie behind them. Essential Quality begins to move on the far outside as they make their way around the far turn. Medina Spirit is still the leader here. And Mandaloon comes on the scene on the outside, a half length behind. Essential Quality is put to pressure. Hot Rod Charlie right in behind the leaders. Flavia and Pratt asking him to go now as they make their way to the top of the stretch. Medina Spirit and Mandaloon are stride for stride. Hot Rod Charlie and Essential Quality closing on the outside. The four of them come into the final furlong. Mandaloon fighting for the front. Medina Spirit battles on. Hot Rod Charlie on the outside. Essential Quality on the far outside. The four of them coming to the finish in the Kentucky Derby. Here's the wire. Bob Baffert does it again. Medina Spirit has won the Kentucky Derby. Mandaloon was second. Hot Rod Charlie was third. Essential Quality was fourth. 2:01:02 the final time. Bob Baffert stands alone with 7 Derby wins.
Well, maybe not. We're going to find out about that on the show tonight. Welcome back to Sports Talk. Doug Miles with you. Don Henderson actually not with us tonight. He's actually doing another show that is based out of Tampa, based on Philadelphia sports, but he will not be with us. But joining us tonight, as we always like to do during this time of the year, is our old buddy Pete the Prophet, who has followed horse racing since he's about 5 years old. He grew up about a mile away from Belmont, as I did, and he joined us by telephone tonight. And Pete, I know it's been a while since we chatted with you, but apologies for that, but good to have you back.
And good to be back. I hope Don's not doing a competing show. I mean, that would be...
It is a Wednesday night show he does. It's a bunch of guys that talk Philadelphia sports, since he was a Philadelphia guy, too. So I'm not on that one that much. Very, very rarely.
That'll last five minutes talking Philadelphia sports. So we can go on.
I offered him to come on because he, if he could call in his other show a little bit later. He said he'd like to, but he was already committed and he couldn't do it.
That's too bad. I'm sure he'd have a really good opinion about all that went on. And let me tell you, for a race that had I didn't really even know who was running in the race. I had no interest this year in the field. A couple of the big horses which were actually Baffert horses, got injured, and I really couldn't care less. And now all of a sudden, the race got a lot of interest, and we got things to talk about.
Yeah, I agree with you, Pete. We talked about it before we went on. We've always, you and I, since we were in elementary school, basically, have followed horse racing going back to, 1970, probably the first time I remember kind of following it originally. And over the years, we watched the Derby, and I really had no interest as well. I wasn't going to watch it at all. Then I got the Sirius satellite. I listened to the race. Sounded pretty good. I watched the replay. It was on YouTube later on. A very good race. And then, all right, big deal. That's it. Last year, it was kind of a ho-hum anyway because they didn't have it till later in the year, obviously. But once it all came out now with this Bob Baffert story, and this story's been lingering not just since the Derby, but for really several years now. I mean, it goes back last year, I think Arkansas Derby, was it? And then even before that, there's been whispers, and now much more than whispers, of problems with drugs in a lot of horses that he trains. So let's get into it. You take it from there.
Yeah, it's interesting that, he is the face of the Derby. He's not exactly like the Asmussen is another trainer that has had, tons of also different violations. There are other trainers that have had many violations, but he's the Derby guy. So, this coming up now after him winning the 7th and, being the first and then for this to come up and the way he's, kind of backtracking and he's kind of doing all he can do, all the right things he could possibly do. But it's a really big deal. Even the way they're kind of handling it when you start hearing some of the explanations as to why it might have happened. I don't know if you heard the one about his assistant trainer might have went to the bathroom near the hay and he had taken the product and that was why it was contaminated. And now the new story is about a cream they used up until the day before that has the product in it. This is going to go on for a very, very long time because, you saw how long ago when the disqualification, a couple of years ago of the horse, and that went into court for a while. Imagine what this is going to be based on a drug test.
What I don't understand, Pete, and of course you've been around the sport more involved than I have, but just, as you said, we both grew up a mile away from Belmont Racetrack. We kind of, we even knew some of the trainers. One guy lived across the street from me. He's a very well-known trainer, but horse trainers are supposed to know everything about their horses. How does a trainer not know what medication his horse is getting? And if he doesn't know, he shouldn't be a trainer.
Well, especially if it's the cream, that would be kind of unbelievable, because this particular drug is allowed in this system, but not before 14 days. He can't be treated with it. So, this is where they bring up this cross-contamination, which has happened in the past. There have been cases where something gets into the hay, let's say,
right, and
it does cause a positive. But if this second sample that gets sent out comes back positive, he's really going to be up against it, which makes the race. Makes the race really interesting. The horse that ran second is not running in the Preakness, and that's interesting to me because he could actually be a Triple Crown winner in a bizarre sort of way if he runs in the race, and he ran a big race and is actually a very good horse, would be very competitive in that race, and then win the Belmont. That would be a really sort of strange Triple Crown. But, Baffert had his positive in the Arkansas Derby this year. I think he's had 11 total with these sort of things. And listen, no one is being silly here. There are drugs out there. They go right on the line. They're constantly trying to find new ones that help out, and they're being, monitored better each year. But the bottom line is that you can see these super trainers. In fact, I don't consider a super trainer. I consider the people that really have, let's just say, the good stuff are the ones that claim a horse for, $15,000-$20,000, and then the next race they go 20 points up from their buyer number, and they're winning allowance races in improvement that you just never see. So there's something going on out there, but this is just such a big spotlight. Good idea of Baffert not going to the Preakness, because that would just be a carnival. They had to let the horse run. The Preakness Pimlico, they did everything right. They basically said the only way you're running is if we are testing all of Baffert's horses throughout the day. If anything comes back at all suspicious, you have to scratch your horse, and they agreed to that. So
here's another thing I don't understand too, Pete. If there's any question of any medication, shouldn't you read through the labels, look on it, what's in it before you give it to just to say, okay, this may be illegal, maybe something we shouldn't use before we put it on? How come we didn't do that? And on the other side of that, okay, why don't we just make it anything you want to give the horse, provided it doesn't, something's going to kill it, make it legal, but you have to tell everybody what you're giving the horse. Why don't they do that? That would eliminate a lot of this.
But then I tell you, then they'd probably shut down horse racing, because at that point, then the groups of people that don't like horse racing as it is. Right.
I'm just saying that's the other end of the other side of the coin. All right, give your horse whatever you want, provided, I'm not saying, give it amphetamine, but, any kind of medication like that. But you have to say in the program and announce it, this is what the horse is on, just to make it clear. That's another way to get rid of all this.
No, it's true. And even what you said in the beginning, if you go and, listen to vet in particular, or including Baffert, this is not a horse that he doesn't know much about. He's running him in the Derby. He's very well aware of the horse and the medication he's on. So, he didn't know that there was some sort of, this sort of agent that was literally given to him the day before. Now, again, I don't know what the level is of what they're allowed to have, and I'm not sure if this was very high, obviously high enough to get a positive, but that was 14 days out. I don't know what a cream does to get you within the day before, if that helps. Now, of course, his stats are saying, well, even with that in the system, it made no difference. It didn't enhance his performance. But has he been doing that for a while with the cream? Has that been something he's been using as a way to kind of backdoor this medication into the system? And this just brings up a lot of other things that are going on. There's like Monmouth this year At the moment, they're going to race with no whips, which is a complete overreaction, just as it was when some horses broke down some years ago, and almost every track in the country went to a synthetic track.
Right.
There is a fine line, and there's a really good compromise, and it's really easy to find, but they always overreact, and that's what seems to happen in general in our society.
Yeah. Horses that in the last year or two, actually before the whole COVID thing, there were several, I guess a dozen, or almost a dozen, I don't know the exact number, that were in California that were breaking down and had to be put down. And they said it was the track out there. So that was one thing. You don't hear about that anymore. I didn't realize they did the no whip rule at Monmouth.
Yeah, that was something that just came out with, I think Santa Anita has a rule where there's certain amount of whip. Like, first of all, the whip cannot go like above the shoulder.
Right.
You're allowed to only hit a certain amount of times, and then a certain amount of times in a row. A bunch of places over in Europe do that, and for me, it's a good rule. The no whip rule is just completely it's downright dangerous. It's two things. It's dangerous for a horse to, if a jockey can't control a horse, you need that whip to help out. So that's the one side of it. The other side is there's a part of this sport that if they would be able to, horses actually, they don't make comeback. When a horse is beaten and he's dropping back to third and fourth, when you watch a horse race, you see a horse back in 10th, he's beat by 15 lengths, the jockey's whipping him. That's the stuff that people get incensed about. When you're in the heat of a battle, then listen, there's a whip out there now that supposedly really gives no pain at all to the horse. There's almost no reaction. It's like a little tap. Ramon Dominguez, the old jockey, made it. So there are ways that you can make this work very easily. But instead, like the no whip rule, then if I'm a bettor, I don't want that. Like, I don't know what the guy's doing. Like, you want to see that. So then that could, already the industry has enough problems with people betting, to get the drugs and things like that. But even betting, like the late money that comes in almost after the gate opens, there's a lot of stuff going on. So now you're going to make me have a bet, and I don't know, and the guy can't whip the horse for me to win? Oh, man, that's just through the dangerous line. I don't know what's going to happen at Monmouth, but they're in a weird position because their jockeys are all, a lot of them aren't even going to ride there. So I don't know what's going to happen with that.
Talking about Bob Baffert, Pete the Prophet joining us. The latest, right before we do the show live on a Wednesday night, that I guess the lawyers got involved and they can run Medina Spirit at the Preakness. Baffert will not be there, as Pete just mentioned. So still pending that. I guess it's a split test they call. They have to get a second sample. Now, I don't know if that sample is from the same blood or urine, whatever they did, after the Derby, or is it taken again like a new sample?
No, it's the same one.
Same
they
one,
always
okay.
Do that. Yeah, they do that. They actually do something where they actually freeze the sample also, and so there's all sorts of ways that they can find, these things. So this will be interesting. I mean, if it comes up positive, which I don't even know if it almost always does.
How could it not?
Come up positive,
right? Yeah.
And then they don't really have a choice at that point. They will probably disqualify him. There'll be lawsuits. And then, they'll withhold the purse or leave it on the side. And once again, the bettors are kind of screwed because, you can't get your money back here in this case. So that's the world we live in here when it comes to this sort of stuff. And in the biggest race in the world after last year, where the race was basically meaningless. They're running in September.
Right.
It was a useless race.
What is the deal with the betting? I guess anytime they said it was an official race at the time, so that ends it, right? No matter what happens after that, legally in the courts, your ticket is no good, right? If you bet on
that's it.
Yeah.
Nope, you're done. And almost every single year, whenever something like this happens, even in other races, there's always some bettor that does. It's usually a lawyer because you're not going to pay a lawyer to actually go after this. There's a lawyer that has nothing better to do, and he tries to sue to get his money back, and it never works. It's just the way they do it. They can't
Then there'll be no way to do it anyway. The winner of that race, they're not going to give their money back, right?
Yeah,
and how are you going to collect?
Of course.
Yeah, right.
Of course not. You can't go back and do it. So it's just going to be.
But they can do the prize money, though. They can make Baffert give back the prize money, or maybe they haven't given it to him yet. It's probably being held anyway, right?
Well, they've frozen it.
Yeah.
So now it'll help now. And then I don't know if they're going to hold it if they disqualify him. If they're going to hold it until after.
He won't even be second then, right? Won't he be just completely out of the race? You won't get any second place. Yeah, right.
Yeah, he's out entirely, which is why, the winner, and let me tell you, the other thing is, to be a Derby winner, obviously the money and the prestige is great, but as a stallion, it's a gigantic deal. Horse that runs second now, he gets moved up to first. It's a big deal for him. So they're gonna want this thing adjudicated quickly,
right?
Because if, let's say, this horse retires at the end of this year, that's going to be a lot of money for him as a stallion if he is really a Derby winner. So there's a lot of money on the line. There's going to be lawsuits flying all over the place.
And they want those horses now to get right in the old shed. They don't wait anymore.
They don't wait anymore. I was just rereading the Seabiscuit book now. Not that that was a billion years ago, but I mean, they literally ran every single week.
Every week, every 2 weeks, yeah, right.
And they would get on a horse. They would get from Chicago. They get on a train, and they go to Santa Anita. They go to New York. They go to Louisiana. They'd be flying. They'd be and no flying. It was all done by rail, and they run constantly. You see this stuff. It's just amazing how many times that they would run in a race. And even recently, I feel that a spectacular bid. There was a horse that ran in like a Jersey race, maybe after the Preakness. I don't know. But
I think it was spectacular bid that you mentioned. I think he did run. Yeah.
Don't they rate at the old Garden State racetrack?
Yeah, right.
But back then they were iron horses. They ran constant. That's how they trained.
And they didn't make huge purses back then. I mean, it was nice for the time, but you had to run a lot to make a good living.
Well, you hear, when in the Seabiscuit book, they talk about the 100 grander, which was the Santa Anita handicap. That's $100,000. And back then that must have been like a, $2 million race.
Right.
And it was a big deal for us. Now it's an allowance race at Belmont right now. So it's no big deal, but, imagine that. And now, horse runs 4 times before the Derby, maybe runs 3 or 4 times more, maybe. And then maybe they run as a 4-year-old, very rarely, and then that's it. It's all over at that point.
Yeah.
So that's the world where we are right now.
Before we move off of horse racing, we'll just kind of wrap it up with this. Bob Baffert, obviously controversial, not just for this race, but as we mentioned, several years now. I would imagine now people are finding it very difficult to root for him, no matter what happens with this particular race. Legacy is important to these guys. Does he go down as a huge cheat no matter what happens here? I mean, what's the deal with him?
I don't think so. He's got a personality that kind of supersedes it, and as long as he is, he's going to be able to hide behind this excuse, and it's gonna get okay with him. But the bottom line is, he'll definitely take a little hit. I mean, already as it is, Spendthrift Farm, which gives him a lot of horses, has paused with him, and they won the race last year with him, the Derby with him last year, which was part of that MyRacehorse.com, which actually I'm in. The MyRacehorse.com, you can basically spend $60 and literally own like 1/1000th of a share of a horse. That's who won the Derby last year, and even they've said they're taking horses away from Baffert. So a lot of people have taken their horses away from Baffert. But it's like, the politics too. Somebody says something wrong and then, all the big companies, hop on board for the time being. It's fashionable, but listen, Baffert's one of the best in the business and he'll get his horses back. But no matter what, this is a big blow because any Derby that comes up, that's the question they're going to ask him. He can win another one, and that's the question they're going to ask him. Medina Spirit wins this race, and then they go, well, would he have won it without it? If he loses the race, that's the kind of horse he is. It's he's in a bad situation. He's handling it right. I mean, he's coming out in front, but he's not coming out and just saying like, They're totally wrong. He understands how this looks if he comes off looking arrogant.
Medina Spirit 9-5 as the opening, at least post position draws, and a Concert Tour was second favorite 5-2. We won't go through the whole field here, but just 10 horses at the Preakness. Now I know last year when we did this, Pete, Pimlico was again in a situation where they were just had to, I think, pass a special legislation is to have a brief meet because that track is in such disarray. I haven't heard anything about the condition of the track. Did they do anything to it since last year? Make it better, or is it the same?
No, they've done nothing to it. The other thing, the thing that actually was interesting was their other track where they race basically not year round, but
Laurel
most of the time at Laurel. They shut down early because their racetrack had a lot of problems. Their physical racetrack, so they ended up going to Pimlico a couple of weeks early. And so, again, nobody goes to the track anymore anyway. So it's, it wasn't a big deal that they went there. But that's just, they're not doing anything about it. They're going to keep the Preakness there. There won't be many people. I don't even know what they're doing this year. I don't even know how many fans are allowed.
Yeah, I haven't heard that. Baltimore, Maryland has been kind of, in a shutdown mode like New York where you are, Pete. So I don't know what the deal is. Yeah.
I'll be curious. I'll be curious to see what happens even at Belmont. They've already, they're doing the whatever the governor has allowed. I guess it's 20%, and as of some date very soon they might go to 33%. But that's only 30 or 20% of the seats. So there aren't. The Belmont's got like 30,000.
No infield walking around or standing room.
No. I mean, I don't know about the Preakness, but certainly not at Belmont. You can walk around the backyard, but only to a point. They have the new stadium there, so that's just hanging out there in the back. I haven't been over there yet because NYRA did their usual thing. They had this fantastic, beautiful ad, and all the jockeys sitting there going, "Oh, we welcome. We're so happy you're back. You're so happy you're back." And then they charge $15 per ticket and a $7.50 charge if you have to buy it on Ticketmaster to sit on a regular Thursday day card where they run 8 races with 6 horses a race. Only NYRA.
$15 to get into the track. Holy cow!
$15 to get a ball. Well, first of all, Doug, they give you a program which basically nobody uses, and they also give you premium parking, which costs $3 normally, and that's their deal. And then you spend $7.50 for Ticketmaster or Ticketron, whatever the name is, to sell you the ticket. So, once again, they do wrong by the fans, and they can have 50 some odd thousand people at Churchill, and apparently COVID took a day off that day because they allowed that amount of people. Same thing with the Florida Derby, but Belmont can't allow 60 people in on a Thursday when there's nobody there, and they make it sound like there's a big deal. They're absolutely the overreaction and the stupidity really goes far and beyond. But NYRA usually leads the way.
As they went bankrupt a couple of years ago. Amazing.
Absolutely, my friend. Yeah. Absolutely.
Well, speaking of Belmont, you mentioned the new arena there. Hockey will be played there next year. They did the final, at least regular season home game with the Islanders the other night. They'll play their playoffs there as long as the Islanders are in it. But let's talk some hockey. Pete, a team you and I have followed again, I guess, since, from May 1970. I guess you the same. A big cleaning house, one of our favorite goaltenders. John Davidson, who was brought in as president just about 2 years ago, he's out. The team general manager, he's out. And now today, the coach, David Quinn, he was only there about 3 seasons, I believe, and he's out. So Jimmy Dolan usually has kept his hands off the Rangers, but I guess his hand is in this cleaning house, and it's a big mess.
Well, it's 2 words, and it's, as I usually say, when it comes to ineptness, I say NYRA. When it comes to anything to do with the basketball or anything to do with MSG, I say Jimmy Dolan. Yeah. And right there, I mean, the fact is that they finally had a plan. They decided to go youth. I think was only one player since their 2014 Stanley Cup run that was on the team. They went youth. They have a lot of talent. They're growing into it. And John Davidson is a kingmaker. And John Davidson, he's the man. The fact that he would only give him a little while and let Sather stick around for all that time. Just shows you the way he holds people up as prima donnas. You know, he held Sather up
right.
as a god, and I'm sure Davidson gave him some flack, and wasn't just a little pushover and didn't kiss the cross of Dolan, and that's why he's out. And I probably because of that incident, with on the rink with when the Rangers are getting beaten up again, brings you back to the old days of Dale Rolfe and and the Rangers
with the Flyers
and the Flyers. Yeah, I mean that's just one of those things that you need to have a couple of tough guys and to police themselves. But I thought that was such a silly move. And if you're going to do anything, to me, the move would have been to fire Quinn. I mean, if you want to do anything, I don't think Quinn should have been fired either. But but to get rid of the people behind the scenes who are sort of the architects this new vision really didn't make any sense. And it's I don't know, and I don't know Chris Drury. I don't know if that's going to be some fantastic name. But again, I think Dolan feels something for this man, and now we're going to have a whole new hockey team. We've had a lot of bad GMs and stuff in the business. Just look over at the Islanders now for really, really bad GMs, and now to a master GM and a master coach.
Yep, doing well over there. But, JD, I mean, you and I saw him play goal, really outstanding goal. Never quite as, I think, at the level of Eddie Jockerman, but he was very good in those late 70s, the year they went to the Stanley Cup in 79, and really only got 1 year, and you can kind of almost throw last year out with those games were hardly played or weren't played at home at all. They were all up in Canada. So you really got to throw last year out, and he didn't get a chance to really do anything. It's a crime. Now, he's going to get paid. I mean, don't worry about that, but to give a guy like that who really was successful in St. Louis for the most part, didn't win a cup, but pretty good. And with Columbus, he turned them into a better team. Give the guy another year or two.
You have to give him another year or two. I mean, you have to. I mean, at least a 3-year plan. I mean, you have to. I mean, again, you cannot count last year. You throw that year out.
Yeah.
Everything he's done before, even with St. Louis, they might not have won a cup.
He made him better.
Differently. Yeah. Much, much better. Same thing with Columbus. I mean, he's done just a great job, and now he's coming home. He's got the ability. He made some great moves. Everything was really going in the right direction. To get rid of him is just so short-sighted and so Jimmy Dolan. And that's the thing that's so frustrating. I think as a Ranger fan, you're hoping that now, like finally, after overpaying for people and just making the playoffs and knowing you're going to get eliminated. And finally, we have a vision. We're going to purge. We're going to make a run, and we're going to get youthful. I mean, I think they're the youngest team in the NHL. If not, they're right there with them. That is what, and they've developed some people that are coming out great, and then we fire the people that sort of started that movement and that have a proven track history. So I don't know. Does Drury have any sort of history?
I didn't even realize he was there until I read the stories, a couple of weeks ago. To be honest,
I'm not even sure.
I've not followed the Rangers that close since a couple of years. But
he might have been playing.
He was only playing a couple of years ago, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe they pulled him off the rink and decided to make him into this new position.
John Davidson, again, for people maybe not aware around the country, was really one of the legendary broadcasters for the Rangers over the years, doing the color with Sam Rosen for such a long time and on TV. So New York fans love him. He was great.
Yeah. Love him, and there hasn't been I don't think that kind of backlash as I thought they might be. I think as it's almost as a Met fans, you kind of throw your heads up. You throw your hands up in the air all the time because something always goes wrong. Well, here's another thing that goes wrong. Hopefully he could do something. I'm sure the one thing he will do is make him tougher, and that is imperative.
I think John Davidson, you might see him back in the booth. Of course, he worked on NBC for a long time doing the games. He may be with, I think, Turner and ABC, I believe. No, not ABC. I think ABC, yeah, got NHL for next year, so he might wind up back doing the national games, maybe with Kenny Albert. So very good broadcaster.
He might be there.
Yeah.
Is Doc is this Doc's last year? Or
Doc actually retired after last year. That was it.
I won't even watch a playoff game now.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine the Stanley Cup without.
No. He did it from home. They set up the remote broadcast for most of the guys back last year, and then of course the network did it as well. And he was a little older than I thought. I mean, he's not an old man, but he was in his early 70s. I thought maybe he was a little younger, but he said he had enough, and that's it. But really, the Vin Scully, we've talked about it before, the Vin Scully of hockey broadcasters. Nobody better.
Clearly, boy, you ever want to go on YouTube and check out some of his calls, that are magnificent, and he's the voice, and I'm going to miss that voice. There's no one that I feel that is anywhere. At least for me, there's nobody that gives me that juice. His descriptions, his narrative, his vocabulary, second to none, and his excitement, and his voice. The high to low, how he do it. Fantastic. He will be missed. You know
who we might see back in the booth? Only reason I speculate on that because he was down here doing the Orioles game for such a long time. Gary Thorne. The Orioles, for some reason, got rid of him this year, so he's a free agent. Maybe they'll put him back in the booth. He was great at hockey when he did it with ESPN, so maybe he'll get back into it. Great hockey announcer.
I did not know that Gary Thorne that he was.
Yeah, well, it's the Baltimore Orioles. Nobody really cares, but we have him here in Sarasota in the spring. That's the only reason I knew about it.
Oh boy, I didn't know that, but let me tell you. I mean, I was going to say in the last statement, the guy that comes anywhere close who hasn't done it in a while is Gary Thorne. Gary Thorne is a superstar. He's amazing as maybe he get a shot. Probably not, this year, but maybe going forward.
I think for the new contract for the next network. I think if he wants to work, he may not want to work, but I mean, I would imagine he's not done. So he's a great broadcaster. Well, just about wrapped it up. Pete, you got anything else you want to get off your chest before we let you go and prepare for the Belmont in a few weeks? We got to talk about that in about 3 weeks. But what do you got? I know you had something on NFL you want to talk about?
No, I'm actually just looking forward to the schedule being released.
Okay. Yeah.
So we can figure out,
Well, you're going to go out to Vegas, huh? Well, you got to let me know when you do that because I haven't been to Vegas in about 3 years. So I'll meet you out there.
Yes, I think I'm busy the week you want to go, but yeah, I'll definitely make that work. But
well, you're not a Vegas guy. I keep trying to talk you into coming out sometime, and you never did. So I'm glad you're turning your ways. It's a great place. You don't have to gamble to enjoy it. I don't. I just like going out there.
Yeah, but I will be there, and we'll do a live remote.
We'll definitely do something. Yeah, some kind of broadcast from out there,
which would be good. But this was great. And hopefully we'll have something more fun to talk about when the Belmont Safe comes up in a few weeks.
In 3 weeks. Well, obviously this Baffert story is not going away anytime soon, so it's going to be in the courts, I would imagine.
Excellent. Let's have a good long discussion about it. I love it.
Pete the Prophet joining us. Pete, thank you, and we will talk to you again real soon. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.